some big white mushrooms here. Oh, there's a big white mushroom. A big white mushroom has a friend now. A nice bigger one over here. So here's a big white shaggy mushroom. That is a big white mushroom. One heck of a mushroom. Hi friends, there is a problem plaguing humanity, a big white mushroom problem. What is the problem with big white mushrooms exactly? Well, part of the problem is that people like to eat big white mushrooms. Secondly, white mushrooms can be very difficult to identify. And the third and most important component to the big white mushroom problem, I will reveal later in this video. White mushrooms can cause up to 90% of mushroom poisonings annually, or more mushroom poisoning incidents than all other types of mushrooms combined. Why is that? Let's look into it. Part of the problem is that the white button mushroom is the most commonly consumed mushroom in the world. People sometimes develop an association thinking that all big white mushrooms are edible. They see one out in the wild, take it home and eat it for whatever reason, and end up becoming ill, being sent to the hospital, or even worse. Don't do that. Kind of one of the more embarrassing ways to die, collecting your own poison out in the world and bringing it to your home, consuming it, and then suffering the consequences. That would be super embarrassing. This has become even more of a problem in recent years as people are relying on cell phone apps and AI to try to identify mushrooms, and those can't be trusted. Don't do that either. Here's a disclaimer from one of them. They say themselves to not trust them, not liable for damages. Suspicious. Don't trust AI. This is another component of the big white mushroom problem. White mushrooms can be very difficult to identify and distinguish from one another, particularly big white mushrooms with white gills. There are hundreds of those. For example, here's a big white mushroom that grows in the forest here in the fall. I've been trying to identify it for over 2 years. Is it a Clitosabe? Is it a trichiloma? I don't know. Could be something else. Might need a microscope to be able to identify it.
Don't mess around with a big white mushroom.
Don't eat any mushrooms you are not 100% familiar with the identification of. There are actually more brown mushrooms than there are white mushrooms. Brown mushrooms comprise 35% of all mushrooms, whereas white mushrooms are only 25% of mushrooms. So why isn't this a video about a brown mushroom problem? Well, there is a little brown mushroom problem. That's really more of a smaller problem, but that's a topic for a different day. If the raw numbers don't explain the big white mushroom problem, what does exactly? The big white mushroom problem can largely be attributed to the presence of just one kind of mushroom, Amanita phalloides.
The deathcap.
The deathcap is responsible for 90% of the annual mushroom fatalities. It is originally native to Europe, one of the world's most deadly toxic mushrooms, and in recent decades it has become invasive and is taking over the globe. Breaking news here in early 2026, there is a deathcap mushroom outbreak currently occurring in California due to more than normal rainfall. Don't mess around with the big white mushroom. Deathcap mushrooms aren't really a pure white, they're kind of a greenish yellow on top. But they can be white or a light yellow, or even kind of a brownish, tannish color. Don't mess around with a big light yellow mushroom. If you're thinking about foraging for mushrooms, you should definitely familiarize yourself with the deathcap. And while you're at it, you should familiarize yourself with the structure of Amanita mushrooms in general. Amanita mushrooms spring out of a universal egg sac, a protective covering that covers the entire mushroom. As it emerges, it will break off and become scales on the cap. Sometimes the scales stick to the top, sometimes they don't. In the deathcap, they do not. The universal veil remnants at the bottom will form kind of a cup shape often. That is called a vulva. There's also a partial veil, a protective membrane that protects the gills until they are mature. That will break off and form this ring-like structure or annulus on the stem. get to know your Amanita mushrooms. Once you've learned their component parts and their structure, you can easily identify them out in the wild, and that will decrease your chances of ever being poisoned astronomically. There are many other dangerous Amanita mushrooms in addition to the deathcap. For example, the very deadly destroying angel mushroom and the less deadly Smith's Amanita. Very dangerous big white mushrooms. And I should also mention the big white mushroom that is the #1 cause of mushroom poisonings in North America, the green-spored parasol or false parasol or vomiter mushroom. The vomiter can often be found growing in fairy circles in lawns, and it can be distinguished by its green fertile surface and green spores in maturity and its brownish scales on top. In reality, the big white mushroom problem isn't that big of a problem. Maybe about 100 people a year die from eating a poisonous mushroom. Many more are sickened, obviously, but if you live in a country with a robust healthcare system, you're likely to survive eating a poisonous mushroom if you seek medical attention right away. But you might survive with someone else's liver inside your body. Only about 1% of mushrooms are poisonous, maybe around 5% are toxic, so most mushrooms are safe, but it is good to know about the big white mushroom problem, especially if you're thinking about foraging in the future.
Don't mess around with a big white mushroom.
I'm Michael File. I'll see you next time
On Mushroom Journeys.